Throughout history, there have been several women leaders, just not one in the United States of America. This will definitely be something new, but I can guarantee you it's something to look forward to. Why? Well, there have been tons of research done on this, and one study came from the Harvard Business Review. Are women better at leading diverse countries than men? Now, this isn't to make it some kind of competition, women versus men, men versus women. This is just to prove what the research has shown, specifically when it comes to diverse countries such as the United States of America. So, if you don't know, the United States is very diverse. It's one of the most diverse countries in the world. Research has shown that on average, racial ethnic diversity within a country is negatively correlated with its overall economic growth. Racial biases, discrimination, and conflicts between ethnic groups, when left unmitigated, can stunt economic growth. This is exactly where female leadership would be most helpful. So this happens worldwide, right? In every single country, there's some type of discrimination and racism going on. And just as they say, conflicts between ethnic groups. And here's why they say a woman leader would be helpful. So the Harvard Business Review did a study, and it came out consistent with their hunch. Their most striking findings was about the times when women led very diverse countries rather than men. In these contexts, female leaders were significantly more likely than male leaders to have fast-growing economies. In particular, the countries in the highest quartile of racial ethnic diversity benefited the most. When led by a woman, they had an average of 5.4% GDP growth in the subsequent year as compared with their male counterparts at 1.1%. Their quantitative analysis suggests that it is possible for countries and their economies to benefit from diversity instead of suffering from its challenges, which include intergroup conflicts, discrimination, and biases toward marginalized groups. That's some great news, huh? Now they go on in the following paragraph to state that this does not guarantee that with a woman leader, this will always happen. However, there is a reason to believe that these woman leaders did something a bit different than their male counterparts. So what did they do differently? There were patterns of inclusive leadership among the female heads of state. Other female leaders reconstituted their cabinets to further reflect the age, gender, religion, and ethnicity ranges in the country. These strategies focused on diversity, and what happened? They increased the GDP. So you see, it wasn't about favoring one ethnic group over another, which many of the male counterpart leaders did. Instead, the female leaders instituted a cabinet that reflected the country. The research goes on to say that other female leaders sought to remove stigmas and biases that reinforced government policies that historically favored certain ethnic groups. They point to the example in Taiwan, where historically the Hans were favored. That's an ethnic group. What this woman leader did was she enfranchised underrepresented minority groups. And this made it so that everything wasn't always leaning in favor of the Hans, but it provides more equity between the groups by removing all those stigmas that the government reinforced historically. Also, there were inequalities in property rights and civic participation, as well as language and cultural exclusions. On the first day of her term, the president of Taiwan publicly apologized to Aboriginal peoples for centuries of pain and mistreatment and called for policy changes to incentivize a shared prosperity across diverse groups in the country. These particular things that were ignored by previous male leaders created great economic benefits. The study goes on to say leaders must focus on better economic outcomes for everyone, not just gains for some groups over others. One lesson we learned from our research is that when the downsides of diversity, festering biases, discrimination, and racial ethnic conflicts are left unmanaged, they are associated with stunted economic growth. Now see, absolutely no company can afford to be a competitive laggard when it comes to developing all, and I repeat, all their employees. just as a country cannot maximize its growth if large parts of its populace are left out of the economy. Leveraging the diversity in your organization requires inclusive leadership that aligns strategy, culture, hiring, and promotion practices, and more. It's time to stop imagining what could be and to do the work required for an inclusive future that can benefit us all. Can I get an amen? So now let's take it on back to Vice President Kamala Harris in her run for presidency. More than likely, what we'll be looking at in a Kamala Harris administration is great economic growth for the country, more unification, and a tremendous boost to the lower and middle class. So if these are things you want, vote President Kamala Harris. Vote for a Democratic Congress, and let's get this ball rolling.